I heard a man die and did nothing to help. That truth has never left me. I was just a kid at the time, scared, alone, and unsure of what I should do. My parents often left me by myself when I was young. They weren't cruel, just distracted with other priorities. I never blamed them. In fact, I enjoyed being on my own. It gave me freedom to explore the house, eat whatever I wanted, stay up late watching scary movies as long as I cleaned up before they got home. It happened one snowy night in early February. My parents were out celebrating their wedding anniversary, which happened to fall near Valentine's Day. I had no complaints. I'd planned a night of horror movie marathons, snacks, and silence. Around 10 p.m., my mom called to say they'd be gone until morning. I told her I'd lock the doors and head to bed soon, though that was far from the truth. I was still on the couch well past midnight, wrapped in a blanket, eyes fixed on the screen, when I heard shouting outside. At first, I assumed it was coming from the TV, but then I heard it again, clear, panicked, and real. I peeked out the window and saw a man sprinting across the street, screaming at the top of his lungs. He ran to house after house, banging on doors, yelling for someone to help him. "For God's sake, help me!" he cried, fists pounding, voice cracking. One by one, lights shut off as people inside chose to ignore him. I couldn't stop watching. My mind was spinning. Was he drunk, hurt, or was something chasing him? Given the horror movie I just watched, I couldn't help but imagine the worst serial killers, demons, creatures in the dark. I was only a kid, but I already knew one thing for sure. That man was terrified of something. And soon I would be too. I lived on a quiet suburban street, peaceful, boring, uneventful. The kind of place where the most excitement was a neighborly argument or a car getting pulled over. But that night shattered everything. The man finally reached my door, slamming his fists against it and screaming for help. "Please, they're coming!" he shouted, desperation cracking his voice. I was just a kid. What was I supposed to do? Trembling, I dragged a chair to the door and climbed up to look through the peephole. He looked young, maybe early 20s, but to me, he might as well have been 50. His hoodie was soaked, his face pale, and his eyes wild with fear. "Just let me in," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Please, I'm begging you." I wanted to help him. I really did. But he was a stranger, and I wasn't even allowed to have friends over when my parents were gone, let alone a terrified man pounding on the door in the middle of the night. "I can't help you," I said quietly, hoping he'd understand. "Please, kid, I swear I won't hurt you," he pleaded. "I just need off the street." "I'm sorry. I just can't." Then, suddenly, he spun and pressed his back to the door, whispering, "Oh God." I backed away and ran to the window. That's when I saw them, three dark, blurry shapes racing across the street, faster than anything I'd ever seen. They weren't human. They weren't anything I could understand. But they were coming straight for him and for my front door. Whatever those things were, the moment they sped toward my house, sheer terror took over. I yanked the curtains shut and dropped to the floor, pressing my back to the drywall beneath the window. My whole body trembled uncontrollably. I was certain they would smash right through the front door and drag me out. Then the man's screams changed. He didn't sound human anymore. His terrified cries twisted into something else, high-pitched, raw, almost animal. It made the hairs on my neck stand up and my stomach twist so hard I nearly threw up the pizza I'd eaten for dinner. The pounding on the door grew louder. Then it wasn't just the door, it was the walls too. And beneath the banging, I heard something. Slicing, tearing. A wet, sickening sound that reminded me of Thanksgiving dinner when my dad carved the turkey. Except this time, it wasn't poultry. His screams turned to chokes, then gurgles, and then something worse. Silence broken by a squelch, then a spray of something wet hitting the ground and siding. I could hear bones snapping, fabric ripping, and something massive chewing. At the time, I tried to pretend I hadn't heard it. But I knew. Deep down, I knew what they were doing. As his bubbling screams finally faded, a new sound filled the night, a chorus of shrill squeals, unnatural and piercing. I felt dizzy, nearly lost control of my bladder. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. Eventually, it all went quiet. Still, I didn't get up. Not for a long time. Only when the silence became unbearable did I crawl upstairs, lock my bedroom door, and bury myself beneath my blanket. Sleep eventually took me, but not peace. My dreams twisted everything I'd heard, making it worse, louder, more vivid. Morning came with sirens and knocking. I peeked through my window and saw several police cars and a black SUV outside. I didn't go down. My parents weren't home yet, and I was too scared. Scared of what they'd found. Scared they'd blame me. So I stayed in my room, silent. Eventually, the knocking stopped, but the police remained. When my parents returned, I heard their voices with the officers. Then my mom burst through the door and rushed upstairs. She banged on my bedroom door, calling my name. I let her in. She hugged me tight, checking my face, my arms, every part of me. "Are you okay? Did you hear anything?" she asked. I lied. I told her I'd been asleep, and I never changed that story. After the police swarmed our street and the chaos slowly quieted, my father finally came back inside. Only one cruiser and the black SUV remained. I watched from my window as two officers flanked by a couple of men in suits went door to door, likely hoping someone had witnessed what happened that night. But no one had, or no one was willing to admit it. It had been a bizarre and deeply unsettling experience, but oddly enough, I began to push it from my mind after a few weeks. Schoolyard rumors ran rampant. Some kids whispered that a murder had taken place right on my street. But no body was ever found. Just a massive puddle of blood that covered our front lawn and driveway, with thick splatter on the door and wall. That was all. Some claimed the amount of blood was far more than a human body could possibly hold. I didn't disagree, but in time, those stories faded, becoming little more than spooky playground legends. For months after that night, my parents wouldn't leave me home alone. To be honest, it was kind of nice. They were far more attentive than they'd ever been. Sure, I had to tag along on boring errands, but I could usually convince them to buy me something while we were out. I'd never call them neglectful, just naive. They never truly believed danger could come knocking at our very door. But that changed. For a while anyway. Eventually, their concern faded. The terror wore off. They convinced themselves it was a one-time freak event, something that would never happen again. By mid-December, they felt safe enough to leave me alone. They had a Christmas party to attend with friends and asked if I'd be okay. I didn't want a babysitter, especially not one just a few years older than Meso. I confidently said I'd be fine. Truth be told, I missed the solitude, the freedom. My mom checked in around 10, and I told her everything was good. She said they'd be home by 1 and that I should head to bed soon. I told her I would. Of course, I had no intention of doing that. After riding my makeshift Captain America shield down the staircase a few more times, I settled in with an R-rated horror flick. It was nearly midnight when a knock at the front door pulled me out of the movie. A voice followed. "Let me in." I froze. The moment I heard that voice, "Let me in," my entire body tensed. My mind instantly flashed back to that night, to the man who had bled out on our front lawn. My dad had to repaint the front of the house after that. No amount of scrubbing could get the stains out. Even the driveway still held faint red marks, permanent reminders of what had happened. "Come on, kid. Let me in." I turned up the TV to drown him out, but it didn't help. The voice grew louder, though not in volume. It was more like it pressed in, invading the silence between sounds. "Help me. Save me. Let me in," it said, rising and falling like static that I couldn't tune out. Hesitantly, I crept to the window and looked outside. The neighborhood was calm. No wind, no people, no movement. Yet the voice continued. "Just let me in. I won't hurt you. I promise." I retrieved the same chair I'd used before and gently positioned it by the door. But as I climbed up, the wood scraped loudly, echoing in the quiet house. "I know you're in there, kid. Let me in. Please." I stared through the peephole. No one. Just the familiar empty lawn and faint stains on the concrete. I looked down through the tiny circle, wondering if he might be crouched below, but there was nothing. No shadow, no sound, but the voice still whispering from just the other side of the door. "Come on, kid. You can save me. You know that, right?" I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I'd eaten too much candy. Maybe I'd fallen and hit my head while sliding down the stairs earlier. Anything to explain away what I was hearing. But the voice kept going. I couldn't take it anymore. Eventually, I turned off the TV and went upstairs. Even after I clicked on the box fan I used for background noise, I could still hear him only now. The voice was outside my second floor window. I buried my head between two pillows. It didn't help. "Don't go to sleep and leave me out here," he said. Then one night, not long after I turned 12, it stopped. Sort of. Sometimes I could avoid being alone, arrange a sleepover with a friend, find an excuse to stay out. But when I couldn't, when the house was quiet and empty and the hour got late, the voice always returned. And it never stopped until I fell asleep, always right after a quiet knock on the door. After college, I made sure to always have a roommate. It wasn't just for company, I needed someone there to help keep the voice away. It worked most of the time. Since we shared similar schedules, I only had to endure the cries for help on weekends, when I was home alone. But that didn't last. Eventually, my roommate moved in with his girlfriend, and I was left alone again. I tried finding someone new, but I think my jittery, anxious energy made people uncomfortable. No one stuck around for long, and when I was finally alone, truly alone, the knocking came back. Nothing could block it out. Earplugs didn't help. Music cranked at full volume only masked the silence in between the pleading. The voice always found its way through. I would scream into pillows, press my hands over my ears, but it didn't matter. The begging continued, and the more it happened, the closer I edged toward madness. One night, after countless sleepless hours, I walked to the door again. Like all the times before, I looked through the peephole, expecting nothing. But this time, he was there, the same man but broken. His hoodie clung to his shredded body, and his gut was torn wide open, intestines coiling down onto the mat in a red, oozing mess. His legs were unrecognizable, just wet pulp and bone. Yet somehow, his right arm remained untouched, stretched forward, hand clenched into a fist, ready to knock. "Thanks, man," he said, trying to smile with the mangled remains of his face. Then he turned to mist. I stared, stunned, as the red-black vapor soaked into the doormat. I stepped outside in a daze, nudging the mat with my foot. It was wet, stained with years of dirt, and now something far worse. I dragged it down the path to the trash can at the edge of the driveway. There was nothing left but Mark's paint, ugly reminders burned into the fabric. I turned back toward the house, barely aware of what I was doing, my mind spinning with shock. As I reached the porch, I heard it again, movement behind me. Fast, heavy. I spun around. 3 dark figures were approaching across the street. The same ones I'd seen that night long ago, and they were coming straight for me. I screamed and sprinted for the door, barely making it inside before slamming it shut behind me. My hands scrambled for the deadbolt, locking it just as the shrieking began outside. They didn't try to break the door down, at least not again. After the initial slam, their pursuit ended as suddenly as it began. But I knew if they had wanted to come in, no lock would have stopped them. I dared a glance through the peephole. They were still there, pacing. 3 massive figures, each one a shadowy void in the shape of something barely human. Easily twice, maybe 3 times the size of a man, they loomed just beyond the porch, shifting back and forth like wolves circling prey. The only weapon I had within reach was a kitchen knife. I clutched it tightly, not because I believed it would help, but because I needed something to hold on to anything. It was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. At some point, I must have passed out. I woke up on the couch, the knife lying next to me on the floor, my body stiff and aching. Outside, the night had gone quiet, but peace was never permanent. Later, over dinner with friends, I realized something disturbing. As the evening sun began to set and I drove home, I felt the weight return to my chest. Dread, thick and heavy. Something I hadn't felt since I was a child. By the time I pulled into my street, the world was wrapped in a pale glow, moonlight and street lamps casting long shadows. And then I heard it again, the howls. I looked in the rearview mirror. They were there. I could feel them closing in, their presence thick behind me. I fumbled with my keys, dropped them, picked them up again with shaking hands, and finally burst through my front door, slamming it shut behind me. My body collapsed to the floor. I latched the lock with trembling fingers and just sat there, gasping. I can't say my life is a happy one, but I'm alive. Sometimes I think about that night, about the man at the door, If I had let him in, would I be free now? Or would the curse have claimed me even sooner? I don't know. Maybe I never will. But I do know this. If you ever hear knocking at your door late at night, don't answer it.